So the other day I put up a video showing the steps to shooting a time-lapse with a DSLR. In this case it was specifically the 70D, but the steps involved are pretty much the same for any DSLR. Remote, you need a tripod or some way to steady the camera. Locking aperture is a good idea, although it's not mandatory. And now I've gotten back to my computer and I thought I would follow up with a second video showing what to do with the images to make them into an actual time-lapse video. That's what a time-lapse video is. It's a video made from a series of still images, although some people do shoot video and drop frames out as well. It's another way to do it, but I really like the stills for a couple of different reasons. One is that you can get very nice, very large quality. So I did not shoot on full-size JPEG or full-size RAW. I shot smaller JPEG images, and the dimensions of these guys are 2700 by 1800. So not gigantic, not even 4K, but certainly larger than 1920 by 1080, which is your highest definition video. Although you can put up 4K videos now, so. But what I have now is 3,206 images, and let's just kind of scan through real quick and see what's going on down there. You can even get a little bit of an idea of a time-lapse just by scanning through. Now I locked my exposure down. I set the shutter speed. I physically locked the aperture so that it wouldn't wouldn't have any variations even within the aperture I had selected. And that meant that as the sun set, it got darker and darker. And you can actually see out here towards the end, there's going to be some frames that I'm just probably going to not use at all and drop off because they are completely, almost completely dark. Now, first thing I want to do is spruce these up a little bit. Even though I didn't shoot RAW, and you could shoot smaller RAW, but what you need to be careful about is, one, how much space you have on your card, because as I said, I shot 3,206 photos. That's a good amount of, that's a good number of photos, and if you're shooting RAW, even small RAW, that can fill up a smaller card. And you want to be careful that your camera can write fast enough to the buffer. These pictures, I took these pictures every 1 second, and with a JPEG, very few cameras would have issues with this. Larger file sizes like RAW, even small RAW, might trip up some cameras, and you might get a little buffering and a little stuttering, and so you won't get exactly every 1 second. You could also not shoot every 1 second. You could shoot every 2 seconds, every 3 seconds, but keep in mind that when you play these back at 24 frames per second, you're going to have to shoot for a very long time to get any kind of length of video. Real quick math that I did for this is 24 frames a second, shooting every 1 second. That basically gives you, in 1 minute, you get about 1 minute of real time sitting here watching the camera take these picture after picture. You get 3 seconds of video roughly, a little bit less actually. And so you can see that that's a very short amount of time for 1 minute. 10 minutes, you get 30 seconds of video. So we're starting to get there at 1 second. But realize if you took that up to 2 seconds, then we're talking about 10 minutes of video is only going to get you 10 minutes of real time is only going to get you 15 seconds. So I hope you follow on that math. And you can certainly play it back a little bit slower. I've played things back at 12 frames per second, but they just not as good. You could certainly do that, but just not as good. Even though I shot JPEG, I want to fix these up a little bit. They look a little dull out of the camera, a little bit of a hazy afternoon, and I want to take some of that away. And you think, wow, are you about to edit 3,206 photos? Well, this is one of the really nice things about Lightroom, is that you edit one photo and then you say, take that and apply it to all of the rest. And also, just a quick warning here, I'm going to keep this fairly basic, but there are paid time-lapse plugins for Lightroom that will allow you to do some amazing thing and say from photo 1 to photo 1000 slowly adjust the exposure of these images. Now that you really should be shooting RAW for those, but it gives you a lot of latitude and creative control after the fact. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go ahead and adjust all of them the same amount because I'm not really changing exposure a whole lot. I'm just adding a little bit of clarity. I actually will brighten it just a little bit. I think that looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to add a bunch of contrast to kind of cut through that haze. And I'm going to bring the black levels down, which also kind of makes things a little punchier and adds some contrast. I'm going to bring the clarity up. You can kind of think of the clarity as an easy sharpening tool without having to worry about it too much. Don't jack it up, especially since it's going to go up on video. It's already going to look a little sharp. And if you play this back on HD TVs, the clarity and sharpness really come out in not the best way. So you want to be gentle with the clarity slider. Around there's good. And let's just make this a little bit more vibrant and just saturate it just a little bit. I've talked before about not overdoing the saturation of your photos. Some people like that look. I really don't. It certainly is a personal opinion, but I keep sharing it with you because I think most professional photographers that I look at, when they look at a photo like that, they're like, yikes! So let me come into the color slider now, though, because we have some, colors that didn't get quite picked up the way I wanted to. First off, I'm going to take the green and increase the green saturation just a tiny bit. So this is how you can kind of get around of jacking that saturation slider over. You can tweak individual colors so things stay in the realm of realistic, but you still get a little bit more of that pop. The yellows I'm going to bring to the left a little bit and make just a little bit more yellow and a little bit less green. The yellow or orange here, I'm going to make sure we get a little bit more orange. Actually, I'm going to try dragging the slider that way and that way, and you can see that I want it just a little bit that way. The reds, I think the reds are pretty good, but let's bring them up to the left just a tiny bit. And that looks pretty good. Now, one more thing that I want to try. I was really disappointed. There were some nice clouds in the sky before I got up to this overlook, and by the time I got up here and got all set up, they really weren't as defined as I liked. I'm going to bring down, this is the gradient mask tool. That means that any effects you apply will be applied heaviest at the top and lightest at the bottom with a smooth decreasing of that effect. So I'm going to just kind of bring up my contrast. Oh, bring down. I'm just trying to get those clouds to come out just a little bit more in the sky. And I'm not having much luck there, am I? Well, a little bit with the exposure. Okay, I'll leave it like that. So that image is great. Then we go to the next one. Ugh, Dullville again. Let's come back here and select all 3,206 images and just double checking to make sure that it's not crooked. I'm going to call it not crooked. And I'm going to hit sync. And I didn't make changes to all of these things, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to hit synchronize. And now you can see up here in the top left corner, it is taking that setting and applying it to every single one of these images. That's pretty slick, unless it gets caught up. Okay, so that really didn't take very much time at all. I just quick cut out because it got stuck for a second, but that took about 10 seconds maybe. And now if we go through each of these images, we have the nice look without the dullness. And let's go down here to the dark areas and see what the dark looks like. All right, good. It's pretty amazing how this tree, this is the top of the tree right off of the ledge or the overlook, is really catching those last rays of sunlight. This is not the most exciting time lapse. As I said, I really would have liked some nice clouds in the sky and maybe gotten more of the sky. But this is what I ended up with, and so this is what we're going to work with for this. Now, we are pretty much done in Lightroom. I'll show you one other thing that is an option to folks in Lightroom to export a time lapse. And that is these templates here that you can get online for free. There are free things and there are plugins that cost money for Lightroom. I should say there are free plugins and there are plugins that cost money. These are free. These are LR Timelapse, and I have not used these enough to talk about them in this video, but I can say that I did try to export these images using this system, and it was unbelievably slow. The export bar moved a millimeter in 30 minutes, and it had, I don't know, 50 millimeters to go, so it wasn't looking very promising. So I ditched that idea and I went with my existing plan, which is to export these images and then use, I'm on a Mac, so I use a program called Time-lapse Assembler. It is a free program, works very nicely. It isn't the fastest program either, but it was much faster than this is. And that works quite well for me. Now, you have a decision to make as far as how fancy you want to get. I'll talk simple first, and then we'll get a little bit fancier. So we're ready to basically export these out. So I can select all of these. I can come up here to File, Export. Now you could set up a preset if you're doing these often. I have presets already. But I'm just going to go to Export. I'm going to export them to the hard drive, choose a folder for later, rename to. Now, I had actually an interesting thing happen shooting this time lapse. It's not that interesting. The first image in the time lapse is image 9154. Just happened that that's how many pictures I've taken with the 70D so far. That meant that over the course of these 3,206 images, somewhere along the line, it flipped over and started shooting from 001. That means that you could, because I shot JPEG, you could completely skip Lightroom and just open up Time-lapse Assembler and say, here is this directory of images, could still be right on the card even, and make a video out of it. Time-lapse Assembler is going to get confused though, because it is looking for these images to all be sequentially named. It's not smart enough to look at the timestamp. Lightroom can look at the timestamp. That's why these are in order. We could order them by file name, and then we would see a bunch of dark ones, and then the light ones, and then it would flip over back to the beginning of the time lapse, and it would end somewhere over there. So it would be completely incorrect. So it is important, if that happens to you, if you hit the limit of 9,999 pictures and it starts over at 0001, that you rename them in the order that they were, and there should be programs that you can find to do this, or like Lightroom. When I export, I am renaming these to a custom name, so it will take them in order that they are in this little film strip, ordered by time taken, and give them numbers, which then Time-lapse Assembler is really happy to. Now, image resizing. This is the big question where you can get simple or fancy. If you're just going to throw these into a video, or even if you're just going to take the time lapse that's made right out of Time-lapse Assembler and throw it directly onto YouTube, you want to go ahead and say resize to fit, and then it should be 1920 on your long side, or just a little bit above 1920 to give yourself a little bit of space. That's best for editing and speed of your computer and efficiency and things like that. But if you want to get fancy, because remember, these images that I've shot now are 2700 wide, almost 1,000 extra pixels on a side. If you want to get fancy, you can export the larger size, and then in a video editor you can do some panning and movements across. And so I'll show that in just a second here. But let's say first I want small. Sharpen for screen, low amount. They're going to be on the screen, so that's going to sharpen it a little bit more. And that's it. And then I hit export. I choose the folder I want to export them to, because that was at the beginning. And as you can see here, I've done two. I have done, I'm not going to be able to find my folders. I have exported, and then I have big exported. And so I've done both. But let's say I've gone ahead and exported, and that's going to take some time. In my experience, that took about 25, 30 minutes at least. Now, Time-lapse Assembler. Very simple program. You open it up, and this comes up. You choose the source directory that is sitting with all of the images that you want to make a video out of. You choose the codec. H.264 is good. I've actually never tried RAW. I'm not quite sure what you would get there, but that might be interesting to try. Frame rate, I like 24 frames per second, works good for me. And then you could say whether or not you want it to resize additionally. If you've exported them out at 1920 or slightly above that, you don't necessarily need to resize it. And the quality level right here, max, high, normal, low. I've only ever tried max and high, and those seem to work very well for me. Now, the file sizes that you're going to get, on the max size, not resized, the max quality, not resized, I got 3 gigabytes file size. The quality, the quality is gorgeous.